And welcome back to the show, everybody. We are here today. We got a special guest, which all guests are special around here, right? We got a special guest, retired Lieutenant Commander Lapid, Mr. Steven Lapid. Right, we're going to get right into it, right? Let me get the book out. I got the book. Hit me up. We got this cool book. Been reading through it. We got Steven. It's good things. Let's get right into it, chat. Steven, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for reaching out and wanting to be a guest on the show. I always tell everyone it's a huge honor to have people actually want to be a part of this show, especially when they're, showing tools for our sailors out there on how to be better. So before we get into your book, Helm Horizon, right, let's get to know you a little bit. You're retired SWO. Let's take us back to the beginning times. You first joining the Navy. When is that? Where is that? How's that going?
Yeah, this is back in 2000. Joined right out of high school. Was 17 years old, so the parents had to sign the paperwork for me. I wasn't quite 18, but I was ready to move on to do bigger and better things right out of high school. So I joined the Navy with all these aspirations to be this great leader, right? Wasn't quite cut for going to, the Naval Academy just yet, or ROTC. So I decided to enlist and, work my way up from there. So I joined in 2000, went to boot camp. I was an ET, electronics technician. And so I did that for a few years, and then decided that ET wasn't for me. Cross-rated to IT under Perform to Serve. So I was an IT. Was stationed out in Bahrain and learned about this program called the Seaman to Admiral program, commissioning program. Applied for the State 21 program. Didn't make it. So I had applied two more times. Finally got picked up for State 21. So under the State 21 program, I was able to commission, which was kind of my ultimate goal from the start. And so, as a young officer, I was on the Sullivans out in Mayport. It's a destroyer. Yep. And then on Gettysburg, cruiser, also out of Mayport. And then I had the opportunity to work with SEAL Team 3. So was out in San Diego working with the SEALs as their assistant operations officer. And then went on to be a department head on amphibs out in San Diego. Because, once you hit San Diego, you never want to leave. So
yeah, definitely not.
And so, eventually, I was reaching my 20-year mark, department head. I'm up for 05 and had to make that kind of decision. Like, okay, I'm at 20 years. If I stay in for another year, I'm obligated to, 05, having to, go through that path of, do I want to take command of a ship? And so, I had to make the tough choice. I was already tired of kind of being away from family, tired of the deployments, long times out at sea. And so I chose to retire, chose family and retired at that position. The ideal was to just clean retire. I'm not working. I'm spending time with the family. That lasted about 9 months. And I got the call from Surf Pack, which is out in Coronado. They were looking for someone with kind of my background in training, operations, planning. And so I got picked up as a contractor for working at Surf Pack, and now I work at their N7 shop as part of assisting with developing training policies and warfighting readiness policies. Big thing I do is kind of manage their kind of the Battle E program for the fleet.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow.
I manage the surface training readiness manual that we use for the fleet, and and other initiatives, future initiatives for training for the entire fleet.
No, that's big time right there, sir. That's big time. I'm sure if I knew it was all that, I'd have a lot more training questions, which maybe they'll pop up as we go into this, because
Sure.
being a decent chief, love to train. And it's very important. But man, every time we see those training, coming from the ATG side of what to do, what not to do, there's always some questions, especially like Bluey for supply department and all that. It's very good stuff. So let's talk about we'll back up. You stay 21, right?
Yeah.
Great program. I got a real good friend of mine that we served with. First term sailors, first duty station. He used it also. How great of a program is that? What school did you finally get accepted to for that?
Yeah. So again, like you said, it's a great program, and very highly competitive. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
Big University of Michigan Wolverines fan. So when I got picked up for the program, it was a dream, because I got to go back home and go to school at Michigan. So I commissioned out of Michigan. Um, I did, I got my bachelor's from them, and then when I had the opportunity to work on my master's, I got my master's through Michigan.
Oh wow,
And
nice.
so yeah, so strong connections to kind of my roots and hometown at Michigan.
Yeah, that's amazing. I said I never did it, but I always thought it was a really cool thing. And hearing my friend talk about it, when he was just graduating from it, it sounds great. What? So what ships? Or I think you already mentioned this, but like, what made you kind of make that decision? I know you said that it was kind of your long term goal already, but what as that enlisted? I don't know if you're ET or IT1 making that Stay 21 program, but what was like the mindset going into that? You mentioned leadership and everything like that. What was Everyone does it for different reasons. A lot of people don't want to admit it's money, because more money means you're able to take care of your family better, right? But what was your kind of leadership reasons of wanting to go that officer route?
Well, I'll be the first to admit, it was it's money reasons, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of you know it. I'll answer the kind of the leadership portion aside, but just thinking about financially and kind of the perks, I
Hmm.
guess I would say, being in that position, right? You have a little bit more control of kind of how you approach or where you're at. Let's say as far as a ship, you have a stateroom. You're not living in the. You're not living. I mean, you're sharing a stateroom with maybe one or two other people, instead of having to kind of be with 30 sailors, right, in
Yes.
one room. So there's definitely the perk side of it. There's the financial side of it, but I guess to answer the question on a more kind of grounded grounded scale, you look at it from a leadership perspective, is that you kind of have the authority, and that's not necessarily leadership, but more authority. And
Yeah.
what we'll learn is kind of how I think what's wrong with a lot of military thought is that authority equals leadership, which is not right. Leadership comes at every rank, right? And that's what I want to kind of get across, is that you don't have to be an officer to be a leader, right? You're a leader the day you step into uniform. And so you know it was that my initial mindset where I was kind of on the wrong side of it. I was thinking, okay, I need to be an officer to be a leader, which is wrong.
Okay.
And so, looking back and kind of where I want to be now is trying to teach the junior sailors, like, look, you're a leader now in your uniform that you're wearing.
Do you think some of that is just like generational, right? you joined in, you said 2000, I joined in 2004, right? It was a different, very much different Navy then, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure me coming in at 2004, you being a salty 4-year sailor, I was the new Navy that was the problem by then, all right? And I get that, but it's like that kind of stuff, those messages, I don't remember leadership really being taught like it is today. It was just kind of like we are the leaders, and it wasn't even leaders. It's like we are the authority as the senior person, and you're the junior sailor. So do what you're told. Is it? Do you see it that being that generational shift over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we kind of realized over time is that, you know, that mindset just isn't working, right?
Yeah.
That kind of that top level down works in certain situations, right? And when where the stakes aren't as high. So you consider boot camp training, right? that that kind of format where kind of authority and leadership is at the top, that's good for training, right? It gets everyone on the same page right away. The stakes are low. You're not in combat. You're not going to die from kind of marching around on the grinder, right? So it works there. But if you think in when you apply uh, more stakes, when we're out at war, right? We need people to make decisions, and that decision can come from anyone, right? And so you don't have to be a senior ranking officer to call out mistakes or call out threats, right? That you would want that to come from anyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure you see a lot of that with the training that you're doing now, right? Um, so much of the training we have to do, what I try to do is like get that decision making pushed down to like, what's the decision you're going to make in this? I love DC, right? Like damage control training team, that I love it. All my friends know it, but it's like, we can't just be, why are you waiting on DCA on the 1MC to make these decisions for you? Right? Like we got to make these decisions here in the locker, right? And then push those decisions up. Hey, yeah, this is what we did, right? Because in real world, God forbid anything like that happens to one of our ships out there, right? But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take local decisions at all levels, at your team lead, at your scene lead, which I don't think, for the most part, the society out there doesn't realize, or I think they do, but it doesn't really grasp it, right? That's a 20-year-old young person, kid, as we would say, at our age. That's a kid making those decisions of to go into that space or not go in that space.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it speaks to that kind of um, we need that level of ownership
Mm-hmm.
for the junior sailors, and that's kind of where that shift from that top level ownership to kind of the lowest level ownership that's what we really need, and that's where we find ourselves most successful.
Yeah. Where do you see? So I'm not. I like you what you're talking about the authority things, right? I think sometimes we do away with too much authority today in the Navy. We do, you got your shipboard standard operating procedures, your forceful backup, your questioning attitude, all those. You probably still familiar with those, right? Um, where do you see some of those kind of getting in the way sometimes of like proper place and time, right? Where we see sailors kind of like too much questioning attitude, where it's like, hey, like this is not the questioning attitude time. This is the you're gonna go do it time. Do you see
Yeah.
like a kind of a overdoing of kind of like the everybody's a leader and kind of like pounding that into so much that we're kind of overdoing it and we got to bring it back to like this medium balance?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a balancing act, right? So what we're talking about is kind of command authority, right? So on one side, you know, we talk about empowerment, we talk about autonomy, right? We talk about decentralization. Like those are all great things, right? But all those things need to be checked, right? And we check them with discipline, and we talk centralization, control. Those, these values are on two sides of a spectrum, right? And so we're constantly having to balance between, centralized authority and decentralized authority. And knowing the situation you're in is kind of where you're going to have to kind of find yourself on this line, because you can't have both, right?
Yeah.
You can't empower your sailors and also be a micromanager, right?
Yeah.
And so, and you can't, and you have to know the impact of too much empowerment, right? Because then, you empower your sailors so much that, you become complacent. You become, things just go wrong because you have no control over your team. And the other side of the spectrum is also true. If you have too much control, you have too much discipline, you become rigid. You become a micromanager. So, you know, it's two sides of kind of like this tightrope, that you're just going to have to find the balance, depending on, what the situation dictates.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I see that a lot with chiefs nowadays, and maybe because I'm a pretty old chief and getting up in my years, where the younger chiefs they've come up in this, you know, questioning attitude and this everyone's a leader and empower everyone,
Mm.
where they really become like hands off, right? Where they let go of the reins completely, and they're like, no, well, I'm empowering, I'm letting them go do it. And it's like, you have no clue what they're doing. You don't have a finger on the pulse of your division, of your shop, of anything. And they've really just let it go. And it's sad to see, because we've gone, like I said, in some instances we've gone too far away from it, and it's hard to try to get them to circle back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like empowerment is such a, like, the current buzzword right now. Everyone
Yeah.
wants to empower their teams, but you definitely need to set the limits. You need to kind of still, have your hands on the reins. You can't just, let everyone just run loose.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it's the kind of times we live in right now. So, as we were talking about this, we got the book. What kind of brought you to the book, right? So you're wrapping up your career and everything like that. And we might talk some more about that, but what brings you to write Helm Horizon?
Yeah. So two things, that the observations that I had, upon retiring. Retiring allowed me, the time to really catch up on reading, right?
Okay, yeah,
When I was active duty, not much time to read, right? You're just too busy. You're too busy, kind of, going through your daily work routine. Too busy working on your own personal qualifications. Too busy, kind of just doing what the command dictates, right? Not enough time for kind of your own personal professional development. So that was my first observation. And then, you know, the second observation is, okay, now that I have all this time, you know, what books do I want to read? And there's so many different leadership books out there. Everything from, military history, um, you know, financial, business books, psychology books, leadership theory, leadership philosophies. There's a whole list of different types of leadership books out there. And, I'm not quite sure which one I really want to kind of really take the time to dig into. And, CNO has their reading list as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And so, and every single book takes time, right? And then the third observation really is, staying connected with the junior sailors. Um, so even though I retired, I was still mentoring junior sailors. A lot of them come to me kind of wanting to know how to apply for commissioning programs. So I still mentor junior sailors to kind of work with them through their commissioning program process.
nice.
And and the questions are typically the same, or like kind of where what they're missing is typically the same, and it's basically how to translate their experiences into their, um, into their leadership potential, like, and getting that down into their personal statement, having them being able to define their leadership, when they're up performing their kind of interview boards for the commissioning programs. And so I wanted to put together this guide that kind of takes the principles from lots of different leadership books written for the junior sailor, and written in a way where it doesn't take much time, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at the if you look at the formatting of the book, it's written in a way where it's it's one page that you have to read just per day, and each day is a different principle. It applies applies one leadership book, one quote from the book, and the book provides an example from either naval history, or an example from the book, or just general history of how that principle has applied in the past, and how that sailor can apply the principle now. um, how can they apply it into their workspace, how they can apply it in their life. And if all that reading on that page is still way too much, at the very bottom of each page is just kind of your fortune cookie kind of real short summary of all of it. Is what does this principle really mean, that you can kind of just take with you for the rest of your day and try to apply it in your real life.
No, that's great. I did not. I was expecting like a full on written, your leadership philosophy book. Which I'm reading the CNO's reading list right now. I think I've gotten 4 of them done.
Mhm.
And I think I liked one of them, and that was the legacy about the All Blacks, which
Oh,
which is a renowned, like, leadership book, right?
great,
So
great book.
yeah, but like out of that, all the other ones I've just have thought have been. My question is always how. Well, one thing I would like to, I always say, what I'd ask the CNO is, when did you read this book, and how did you apply it to the Navy when you read it, right? That's because everything we should be doing is all right, cool. And you got one of my least favorite books, Hand Raised. I've never read the book because I don't like it already, but Jocko Willink, right? Um, Not a huge fan, but like the extreme ownership, right?
Mhm.
It's sometimes there's good principles out of it, right? But all collectively, it's just kind of like, wow, like, the regurgitation is so much. But I really like how you took the pieces out of it and then gave direct Navy application for the sailor to be like, this is how you can take this, and this is how you do it in the Navy.
Right.
Which there's just so many of these books do not do that, right? Even like I said, the CNO's reading list. It's all these great, and this, he broke it down, because you got the foundry, the fighting, the this and
Mhm.
that, all these sailor books, the competence, the character, all these different categories. So it's a lot to read. But again, when you get down to it, it's like, okay, well, how does this apply to me in the Navy?
Right.
So it's real, and I think it's go ahead.
Yeah, so that's exactly it, right? So a lot of these leadership books, it's a lot of theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I wanted to do is, because when you're in the military, you learn how to write a certain way where it's like bluff, right? Bottom line up
Yep.
front.
Yep.
You just get to the point. And that's what I wanted to do with this book. Like, let's get to the point to these books. And even if you don't like these books, if you don't like Jocko, you don't like the way he writes his books, there's a lot of there's a lot of good insights. Just
Yes.
let me tell you what the point of the book is, how you can apply it, how it was useful in the past, so that it's a proven principle. And use this principle in your workspace.
No, absolutely, sir. Absolutely. It's this, like I said, even if you don't like it, I mostly don't like it because I've heard him talk about it so much, and it's really like the voice talking about it is what drives me crazy. But again, it's like, no, there's a good point in there, and if we could just take that one small point and just talk about that and how we're going to use that in the Navy, then we're going to be better. So that's what I really like about yours. And say so, and this is one of those ones too. I know some junior sailors might not like it. I love it. Um, you know, this is a do it at quarters kind of thing. Hey, what's today? Let's open it up. All right, what's our leadership lesson for the day? And then you go through this real quick, and you're like, all right, now we're better. Maybe you're not taking it on. Maybe you're the sailor that just really doesn't care. Cool. But out of a division of 10, maybe 2 are taking it on, and they're probably the 2 that are going to stick around in the Navy anyways. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah,
at
I
least
mean
if I'm making them better.
that's all it takes. That is exactly how I envision, using the book. I envision, you know, a sailor just reading one entry, and it doesn't have to be the full entry. It could just be the quote. It could just be, the eyes on the horizon portion, just
Mm-hmm.
something simple from that book, and just sharing it at quarters. And who knows who that's going to affect, especially just that day. Maybe they learn something about, um, there's entries about the importance of writing things down, you know and so I envision, like, I remember my time in the Navy is just a bunch of good idea fairies just floating
Yeah.
around. Everyone has all great ideas, but no one ever, has anyone actually taken the time to kind of write it down and turn it into something actionable. Like, that's one of the entries. Just write it down. Simple as that.
Yeah. What what do you think of a lot of you mentioned the psychology, right? A lot of these leadership books, the psychology of it. And I used to get into this with the senior chief on my last ship. We'd get into a lot because he'd start preaching the psychology and everything. And I just have to remind him, like, cool, I'm glad you agree with all the psychology books, but you're not a psychologist. So don't like try to psychologist your sailors. You should just be chiefing them, right? What do you think about some of that? How kind of like we've turned leadership into the science of psychology and people. And if you can just understand the science, then you're going to be a better leader, which I wholeheartedly disagree with.
I'm not the type to kind of just use one tool, and to me, it's just a tool,
Yeah.
right? Knowing, having that knowledge of, like, the different theories and psychology of kind of leadership, you know, is just one aspect of leadership. And if you're relying on that all the time, then you really need to kind of broaden your range. And so, even this book, I'll admit, it's not the answer to all of leadership's problems, right?
Yeah.
It's simply a tool, and having that wide range of tools in your leadership toolkit is what's going to make you an effective leader.
Yeah. Do you do anything with the um the leadership training curriculum in the Navy, or is it all just
I
shipboard?
I do all the basically unit level
Okay.
uh, training, not at the individual level. But I will say, after I published the Helm Horizon book, it was picked up by the University of Michigan.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
I I am currently turning it to three distinct leadership professional development courses at the University of Michigan.
Oh, awesome. That is great. Congratulations on that. That's exciting to hear.
And so, I've been piloting kind of this course development. I'm out here on the West Coast, so I have taken it to USD's NROTC unit, and so I'm I'm pretty sure that they like the training, and so I look forward to kind of working with them and trying to further developing the course and using their ROTC unit as kind of the guinea pigs, right?
Yeah. So is that something you want to eventually? I mean, I know you're doing the unit stuff for the Navy, right, as a contractor now, but would you like to kind of move over to some of the leadership stuff that the Navy puts out, like probably at NETSI or something? Is that something that interests you, or just not quite because of location kind of things?
No, that's absolutely kind of one of the larger overarching goals of kind of what I'm doing now. If I can turn this into a successful like training program, I would love to kind of put this in front of sailors. I have done it for a couple commands now, just kind of bringing the book and using it to train sailors. I've trained sailors during their Sailor 360
Oh
programs,
wow,
uh,
okay.
different command book clubs, and just kind of putting it out there. And so far it's been received well, and so they keep inviting me back. But eventually, yeah, at a larger scale, I would love to see kind of this book and the training course that I'm putting together to be kind of a bigger thing for the fleet.
So where do you see what you've been able to develop now, right, compared to what you were being mentored or trained as a leader in your enlisted years and then in your junior officer years? Where do you see that you could improve the Navy? Right, over again, it's a different time the last 20 years, but where would you like to, like, what is the big leadership tools you'd like to give sailors, starting today, that would make them into the next 20 year, the next admiral leadership kind of thing?
Yeah. So the leader, the Navy has its leadership framework already, right? And we know that, when, the sailor hits certain milestones, they're going to go through their, leadership development course. But what happens in between then, right?
Yeah.
In between the few years between the courses that they're taking, you kind of hope that they're in a command where they have good mentorship, they have good chiefs, they have good, supervisors that provide like great leadership, mentorship, and they're having a positive experience for their leadership development to grow. So what I would envision is, you know, what happens if that mentorship is not there, right? What can that sailor do? And so that's where I would like kind of this book and this kind of this professional development training that I'm developing would kind of fill in that gap in
Okay.
between their kind of official leadership training courses that they're taking through the Navy's leadership framework. You know, that's where the book comes in, is you have access to this book at any time, right? You can keep it in your rack, or you can keep it in your workspace, and you're just pulling it out like you said, like before quarters or at quarters, and you have this guide that kind of teaches you professional development, leadership at any time, and you don't have to wait for to take a course.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely on uh, your supervisor to kind of show you the ropes when it comes to leadership. You have access to it now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. There's a couple things you're saying there. I'm not a I don't know. I'm not a real. You'll see. I'm not a big fan of much of what the Navy's doing nowadays. Like the
Mhm.
EOD courses, they're okay, right? But again, I think that gets a lot into the like psychology things, psychology talk, and it's just I don't know. I think we're leaving a lot. We're not serving the sailors enough with that, right? We're not giving them enough. And I'm a big proponent of there's no better leadership lessons than experience,
Mhm.
right? Like that's where you can learn the most from leadership. Excuse me. Apologies. Is from experience, and it's like it doesn't like again as you mentioned, and we know this, right? These are tools. The more books you read, it just opens up your aperture of different points of view, different tools. Think you take some of it, you leave some of it out, right? But you're not gonna become a leader just by reading a bunch of books. No one's ever shown up. I'm sure you've shown up places and they haven't been like, excuse me, but how many books have you read on leadership? No one's ever asked anyone that, right? It's like, what's your experience? What do you do? What do you know? Right? So do you think sometimes the Navy's kind of, we're missing, like we're missing the mark on this because we push, again, it goes back to the balance. And again,
Hmm.
are we kind of keyholing ourselves here into only pushing one side of it and we're kind of getting away from the experiences?
Yeah, you definitely need both, right? And so you need to have that background, you need to have that knowledge set, and you're going to get that through training, you're going to get that through books. But like you said, yeah, you definitely need experience as well, and it is a balancing act. And you're going to get the experience, right? You're if you're in the Navy, if you're in the military, you're going to get that experience. It's going to come. um what's going to be hard is reading books is not going to come naturally. You're
Yeah.
going to have to take that initiative. And so if reading books is hard for you, right? How are you going to overcome that obstacle? Because like we've said, part of being a good leader is to have those different tools. And having different tools, reading books along with experience, how are if books is an obstacle for you, how are you going to overcome that? And so that's why I wanted to create this book, is so to make it the access part of it, which is the problem, the access of kind of simplifying reading, uh, to kind of overcome that obstacle. I try
Yeah.
to make it as simple as possible so that those who are having a hard time reading have this tool that they have access to.
No, you're absolutely right there. The number of books, I'm at a recruiting command in Tag San Antonio, right? I'll dox myself. It's okay. Government knows where to find me. Plenty of time to read, right? And with audiobooks nowadays, I say I read, I'm really not reading. I've read a couple books, paper, actual copies, but it's a lot of audiobooks now. And I can knock out so many audiobooks with a 45-minute drive each way, to and from work. Like it's really ramped up my time. So I'd say if you're a listener out there and to what Steven is saying about like having the time to read, if you're not using audiobooks also in today's world, and like get on the audiobook train, maybe buy the book, also add to your library, definitely do that. But like audiobooks are such a good tool nowadays to kind of really expand how much you can, quote unquote, read for that. um what what was in your first, before you commissioned, what was your like biggest leadership lesson that you learned or that was taught to you, and who was that by?
Oh man, let's see. That's a good one. You know, I'm gonna reframe the question, and I'm gonna take it to just commissioning, right? As a
Okay.
kind of as a young junior officer, um, my first ship as an ensign was pretty tough, right? I went through 6 COs on my first tour.
Jeez.
So I
What ship
had
was that? It was the Sullivans.
it was the Sullivans,
The
yeah,
Sullivans. Okay.
the Sullivans. And so I had experienced a wide array of different types of leadership on that ship. Some leaders were good, some leaders were bad, some were kind of just in the middle. And so that's kind of where you learn that, okay, as you progress in the military, you know, the authority is going to change, but good and bad leadership, you can have good leadership in a high ranking position, you can have bad leadership in a high ranking position. So that's where you kind of learn that, leadership is not a rank, right? It's a mindset. So it's not attached to your color device, it's not attached to the number of stripes you have. It's really just inherent in who you are. And so what I've learned is, if you want to be a good leader, you need to develop that kind of skill set right now. You're not going to say, okay, I'm going to be a good leader when I reach this rank or when I reach this position. I'm not going to be, when I become chief, that's when I'll be, a
Yeah.
great leader. No, like you start working on it at it now, so that you know, so that when you become or when you reach that position, you've already been a great leader.
Yeah, that's something I tell people through the season every year is the first class you are today is the chief you are tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? Like there's nothing magic about the matching pants. Like just because your pants turn khaki doesn't mean automatically you're this super leader and you're just gonna do it all. It's like sure the authority comes with the anchor, right? The oh
Mhm.
no that's a chief. Like sure some of that comes, but like actual leadership, no, you still don't have it because you didn't have it as a first class because you didn't develop it as a second class, and no one ever showed you as a third class, right? So
That's right.
I can see how you can to make that out. So I got asked then because you reframed the question. Do you feel that there wasn't nothing that profound or anything that you learned as enlisted? Which is totally okay. I could understand that. I know that I've known people that have said, yeah, they're commissioning because they don't find anything in the enlisted community that challenges them with either leadership or intellectually.
No, I think, when as an enlisted sailor, you're still, I was still so brand new that I was
Mm-hmm.
just going through the motions,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
so, you're going through the motions. You're really just you're without knowing any better, you're just doing what, you know, the person above you is telling you to do.
Yeah.
And so, without putting much deep thought in like um, perspective into kind of what I'm actually doing. It didn't really come until, you know, until I was in the State 21 program, and then I
Yeah.
was getting into more deeper level. Um, they give you the leadership courses, and I really wasn't putting much thought of it as an enlisted sailor that I
Yeah.
think we should be having those thoughts, and that's why we're kind of having this discussion like, man, like
Absolutely. Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about it when I was an enlisted sailor, but I wish I had the leadership at that time to tell me, hey, this is important, this is how you're going to become a better leader.
No, I think that's spot on, right? I know I feels like I put you on the spot, but again, that's generational difference there that I don't think sailors today see, right? It's 20 years ago, there wasn't much conversation to your E5 and junior about you need to learn how to be a leader. It was shut up and color and
Yeah.
get to work, and where now it's like everybody's the leader. And again, maybe too much, maybe not enough in some areas, command to command, it depends. But and, you've done a team 3. I was at team 7 before. Might have been around there. Say I was there 2011. Yeah, 2011 to 2014. Is that when you were over at 3 around there?
I was there 15 through 17.
Okay, just after I left 7. Yeah, so like in that community, they're showing up, right? And they're not the platoon LPO or anything, but they're immediately they have a job. And
Yeah.
whatever that job is, they better be able to lead themselves to that water and make it happen. So
Yeah.
again, community to community, it differs.
Yeah, they get it. I mean, it's not just it's strange because when you work in that, the spec war environment, it seems like, yeah, they understand. They understand the importance of ownership. They understand the importance of kind of accountability at the lowest level. And so we need to kind of have that same mentality across all communities.
Yeah, no, definitely, sir. Definitely. I 100% agree. And there's some things I've taken from that and implemented myself about, that, especially that accountability part, right? Not just for yourself, but to your teammates, right? Um, Drop dead times, if we say it's, this is the drop dead time, this has to be done. If it's not done by then, I don't want to hear nothing else. Like, just like it's literally just drop dead. You're not getting
Yeah.
off that mountain. You're not making it. So, when Chief says it has to be done by then, I don't want no excuses. It better be done. But so what? Let's do some fun stuff here, right? Best port visit you ever been to?
Cyprus.
Cyprus. Okay.
Cyprus. Yeah.
Okay. Greece.
I want to. Cyprus is on top there. Um,
Oh, you did
I
a
was.
lot of since Mayport. You did like a lot of European. You did European
Yeah, we
cruises. Oh,
we did a
that must be nice.
Med cruise and a lot of Fifth Fleet.
Yeah.
But yeah, we go through the Med. Cyprus is up there. One of my buddies at the time got his whole leg tatted up with this kind of ridiculous tattoo, but I was there for him. I was supporting him. Iceland was a was another one that sticks out there. It's one of those things that you find so strange is that it could be, you're it's like 0 200 and you're on watch and the sun's still out and it's still
Oh
like
wow.
light up
Yeah.
there in because they have kind of, it doesn't really get dark on that time of the year we were there. So yeah, those are the two that stick out the most.
Nice. 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 All right. So back to the leadership. What would you? We were talking about this earlier about you doing some writing or like changing up the Navy leadership programs, right? What do you know about it as it stands now, and what do you think needs to be implemented into it to make it better?
So so the Navy is starting. It's slowly developing its kind of professional development, the training, right? And so that program's called LAPS, and that's for junior officers, right? The LAPS program, SWCLA is kind of like their leadership assessment. So it's good to see that the Navy's now picking up kind of, okay, professional development is an important thing, and we need to kind of standardize it. Um, what I would want to see, again, this is, either both enlisted and officer, is kind of uh, almost like a mind shift, or kind of this mentality where we really need to just have access to kind of leadership development on a more regular basis, instead of kind of waiting for these dictated milestones that you need to reach, because who knows how long, far in between, you're getting a leadership course, you know uh, on day one, and then you don't get it again until 3 4 years later, and then you're not getting it again 3 4 years later after that. What are you doing in between? You're gaining experience, but you also need to have access to more tools, while you're gaining this experience.
Do you see in the future? Because I've heard this coming season, Chief season, there will be some more something more official in terms of guidance. Do you see in the future where the Chiefs mess is going to have to do away with the season and go to something more standardized, more official for Chiefs training? And do you
uh,
support that? Where do you stand on that?
One, I mean, I haven't heard anything about that, but I would be against it. Like, why why would you why would you shut down something that's so part of tradition, right? So I I don't know enough of kind of what's coming, or if it's just a rumor, but to me it's just, you know there's this process, and it's not one of those things that has been a problem that I know of.
Yeah.
Like, why why shut down a good thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of the argument is, along with what you're saying, is like it's not, it's a tradition. So because it is a tradition, it really it doesn't hold much value, right? It can be done away with because there are better, more formalized official training methods that can be used to give our leaders the proper tools to perform their jobs. and a tradition doesn't match it. And the sad thing is a lot of this comes from chiefs within the mess again, and it might be this younger generation that we've done it to ourselves. We've raised them on this, everyone's a leader. Here's the formal training, this and that. And now they're the enemy is within the mess kind of deal. And they're like, no, you're right. We are better than this. We should have more formal training. We should do away with the shenanigans, as some of them like to say, or the less formal training methods. And we should have formalized, per instruction coming out of NETC, this is what you shall do. This is what you shall train to. That's really what it is.
Yeah, I mean, so what it sounds like is, it's again, this, you go back down to kind of these core values, right? You know, innovation versus stability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, or tradition, you know, it's it's a balancing act. I feel like innovation is another one of those buzzwords, kind of like empowerment, like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about before. Everyone wants to be innovative. We want all these new things that haven't quite been tested out into the fleet. And so, but we want to innovate. We want to do new things. But what's the risk to that, right? What's the risk to just innovating wildly? It's chaos, right? You
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen, you know so you need to kind of dial it back. Right, you got to keep innovation in check, just like how you would want to keep empowerment in check. You need to dial it back with something that's proven, and that's where tradition comes into play. That's where security, stability comes into play. Things that have been proven in the past, you need to keep innovation in check.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't want the season to go away. I think there's real value in it, if done correctly, right? Like with anything, I've had plenty of sailors sit in the ELD courses, and then I get them a week back. A week later, I get them back in the division. I'm like, all right, talk to me about what you learned. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember, Chief.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also not to say that, we can't do things better, right?
Yeah,
So, we have tradition, right? But what's the risk of kind of just doing the same things over and over again, right? We just become stale, right? We,
yeah,
we become stagnant. So, like I said, it's a balancing act between trying new things, but also kind of ensuring that we do it in a way where we do it in a way where we don't lose the kind of tradition part of it.
yeah. Back to your book. How did you decide the quotes that you chose from all the different books? How did you decide that?
Yeah. Um, this is where I kind of allude to writing things down,
Okay.
right? So, um, like you, a lot of these books, I was listening to audiobooks, right? Some of them were read, but a lot of them were audiobooks. And so, whenever something stood out, I marked it. I was like, okay, this is where this is a quote. This is something. This is a
Yeah.
principle here. And so, and a lot of times, when books are kind of marketing itself, they have some of these quotes. And so it was a mix between, okay, I heard something that stood out, I marked it. And there's also like, okay, this is a pretty common famous quote from this book that's kind of already well known. I marked
Yeah.
that too.
Okay. All right. And then how did you come up with your best part, or the best part of it, because this is from you, the take the helm and eyes on the horizon? Is that just I mean, that sounds like some real swowy stuff there, sir, and I love it. Who y'all surface Navy, I'm all for it. So is that just kind of what you see? I had to put a joke up on the whiteboard today. Mind your helm, there, boats. Is that where that's from?
Yeah, well, Helm and Horizon, um, I want to say, right, it's a thing. It's, you look up Helm and Horizon, you'll see a few things that are out there, not related to the book. How I kind of twisted it to kind of form this book was, okay, what does helm mean? What does taking the helm mean? Well, it means, putting your hands on the wheel and taking control of, you know, of you, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
You are in control of how you're going to act, how you are going to lead. And then horizon, how can I make this fit into kind of what I want to produce? Well, horizon, keep your eyes on the horizon, which is, okay, I have this leadership principle. How can I'm going to use this part of the book to showcase how a sailor is going to use this principle and apply it to their workspace in part of a larger goal, right? So kind of having that foresight, having that kind of inspiration to do better. And so together, that's kind of where the title of the book came out.
And then, that's the title. So how did you come up with like in the book where you have like take the helm and then you have your breakdown there and then your eyes on the horizon? Like, how did you come up with those? Is that's just your how you want people to take that on?
Yeah, so the each entry or each page is its own thing, right? It's its own kind of principle. And so kind of looking back into my experience as an active duty sailor, okay, this is how I would use this principle
Yeah.
in my workspace. And so that's kind of where I would break it down. Okay, um, communication, or let's use a previous example of kind of writing things down. I was always the type of person to create binders, right?
Hmm.
And so whatever program I was running, I would be in, I would ensure that I had a very clean and organized binder for that program. And so, you would look at this principle, which focuses on kind of writing things down. That's the principle. And you're the Navy history part of it would be something like, Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of the nuclear Navy, was always about kind of writing things down, about being strict with the process, and he kind of revolutionized nuclear Navy because of that. And so the take the helm part was, okay, if writing things down is important, let's say, you're a junior officer, or you're an LPO in charge of a program. Write things down, keep a log of everything, keep receipts, put it in the binder. Or you can say, hey, you're even a more junior sailor, write down, journalize things, write down lessons learned, write down mistakes and what you learned from it. That's also a part of kind of learning from writing things down. And then the eyes on the horizon, well, the bluff is write things down. That way things aren't lost in your thoughts, in your mind, and that you formalize it into something that's lasting.
Yeah, that's great. That it goes to something I was always told, and as a junior sailor, never did, was write it down. Right? LPO's always telling me write down everything you did every day. Right at the end of the day, just take that 10, 15 minutes, write it down. I did this. I did this. Checked out that. Checked out this many parts or this or that. And then by the end of the year, what do you have? You have your brag sheet.
There
And
you
then
go.
the brag sheet's a lot easier to write, and then your eval's a lot easier to write. But me being a knucklehead, never did, right? But now you're hearing it here, everyone, not just from me or your chief, right? Write things down. Sir, I think we'll start wrapping up there. Is there anything else you wanted to share or talk about?
No, I mean, we've talked about kind of where I'm going next with the book, and right, and
Yeah.
that's developing these leadership courses. And so, what I didn't talk about yet was what these leadership courses kind of entail. But we did actually talk about it because, I talked about these kind of dichotom, these relationships of core values that kind of pull on each other. And so the course that I'm developing kind of identifies all these different core values that that pull on each other, right? And they're all good core values, right? We talked about how empowerment is a good core value, but it needs to be checked with some level of control. Control is also a good core value. You talked about innovation, right? Innovation is a good core value. We want to do new things, but you need to check it with tradition, right? Tradition is also a good core value. And so I have all these different tensions between core values, and being able to kind of identify where you're at as a leader, and being able to identify your core values, where you kind of place yourself on these different kind of lines and spectrums, is part of what this leadership course I'm developing. Being able to kind of map where you are on these different tensions.
Okay, I mean, we could talk about. I don't want you to do any spoilers if it's not ready to be spoiled yet, but we could talk about it. What it is? I know you mentioned it earlier about the some of the officer program things. They're
Hmm.
talking about I think you said Twizzler or Swizzler or something. I don't remember.
Swickla
Swickler.
is on, under kind of this. It's called Lap S Leadership. I think Ascension program. Surface is kind of the overarching program
So
for
so
junior.
is that a um a scoring of their leadership abilities? And is that what you're trying to like? Part of your course development is like these criteria where you could kind of score yourself on these different areas.
I'm not fully sure, because this program kind of it's a new program, and I've already kind of left active duty, so I wasn't able to kind of participate in it. But it's part of, I do believe they have kind of like this almost like a roundtable discussion or a Socratic method discussion on kind of leadership. And so it's almost like a week long course of kind of just a broad range of kind of like leadership discussion with kind of senior mentors and peers. So I'm not quite sure what the details of what it entails. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure where the potential gaps would be on what they're developing. But it's what I like about it is that they're doing something,
Yeah.
right, rather than kind of nothing at all.
Do you think that's something that would be useful, right? Especially at like on the officer side, going to command or something, or even on the enlisted side, as first class is trying to get selected for chief, is having some kind of leadership scoring um, input, with their package or whatever, to say like, hey, look, yeah, they it's an interview, right? I know, I've never been at command, obviously, but like whatever that process is, but something that kind of goes through their leadership a bit more than just okay, yeah, they've screened and boom, they're good.
Yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't emphasize scoring, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I would I would I would like to see like a mapping, right?
Okay.
Because how would you score someone, all right, who values, using previous examples, how would you score someone who values control, right? Like we said, control is not a bad thing. You need
Right.
a level of control. How would you score someone that truly values more of empowerment? I mean,
Yeah.
that empowerment's not a bad thing. It's knowing, or having that conversation of kind of knowing where a person is on these different maps. And I'll use new examples because I kind of used those ones before. But like, let's say, how would you balance someone who on the spectrum between honesty and loyalty, right? Right. They're two different things, right? You're either going to be honest with someone, or let's take this scenario, right? And I'm going to use this scenario because I just used it to teach eighth graders.
Okay.
uh, your friend cheats on a test, right? And the teacher knows that someone cheated on the test. All right, are you going to be honest to your teacher, or are you going to stay loyal to your friend? Right?
Mm,
You can't do both, right? And
yeah.
that's kind of where this spectrum comes from, between honesty and loyalty. And what's the impact of being too honest? Well, you can be brutal. that's where being brutally honest. You can kind of be too honest where you kind of have a negative effect on relationships.
Yeah.
Or you can be too loyal where you're just kind of complicit to kind of what everyone else is doing. So, that's another example of kind of these core values. We want our sailors to identify their core values, but what's the impact of kind of, you know, being or doing too much towards one core value over another? And so going back to the question is, you can't really, I don't think scoring is the right term. it's
Yeah.
it's mapping, knowing where you are, so that if you lean towards honesty, or if you lean towards loyalty, you kind of know yourself enough that, okay, I know in certain situations I'm going to lean towards honesty. And if I'm on a team with others and I'm able to kind of identify where their core values at, then I know that I'm either going to be aligned, and it'll be easier to work with that person because we're aligned on our core values, or their core values are a little bit different, and I just need to be able to kind of communicate with them in a certain way so that we can be on the same page and accomplish our mission.
Yeah, I can see where that'd be beneficial in like the wardroom or mess setting, like collectively, right? Whether you're the CMC or the CO, right? XO, and knowing your teams, mapped, right? Because then like if I have nothing but loyal, right, and no one's going to tell the teacher I cheated on this test, that could be an issue, right? That could be an
Absolutely.
issue for that chief's mess or that wardroom to be like, well, then that means I could get away with more because and then that's a self check. We have a bunch of this on board. That means that when things are going bad, we might not be able to find out that things are going bad because everyone's
Yeah,
going to
that's
kind of keep it to themselves.
That's exactly it. So, if you're on a team and you know that you are aligned on this certain core value, you know that your team has blind spots.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I think, this type of training that I'm developing, that's where it's going to become useful. Is
Okay.
being able to kind of know where you're aligned, where you're not aligned, being able to kind of communicate differences, and being able to identify the blind spots in your team.
Yeah, I think it's great. I look forward to hearing about it or seeing it, or maybe it'll be in the Navy. I'll be long gone by then, but you know, I'm sure I'll be keeping my finger on a little pulse, maybe. But all right. Anything else, Steve?
That's it.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and hearing and talking some leadership with you. Go ahead and tell us, where can everyone find Helm Horizon?
Yep, Helm Horizon is pretty much in every online bookstore now. So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, Target, Walmart. It's all on the online bookstores. Just Google it or just search on it on Amazon.
And do you have any social media? Do you do any social media like dailies or anything like that? That the listeners can follow you on.
Yep, they can go to helmanhorizon.org, or they can dodreads.com.
Oh, DoD reads. There it is, everybody. There it is. Helm Horizon. Thank you for sending a copy over. Again, I'm sharing it with all the sailors that work for, not for me. I don't have no sailors work for me, but the ones that work in the building. I appreciate it. All right, if you stand by, let me get this outro and we'll be good to go. One moment. All right, everybody, that's it. That's it for today. I appreciate you all for tuning in for another episode. Very good book. Highly recommend. Go check it out. Get it. Read it at quarters, right? Maybe once every day, maybe once a week. Work it into the schedule. It'll be really good. And I think your sailors are going to definitely benefit from this, right? The way it's laid out, daily entries, it's really good. So check that out. Until next time, we'll see you again.